Namaste, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Musings of a Modern Mystic with me, Amy Yasmin. So, I invite you to join me for a nice breath. Notice how you feel in your body, where you're at in your day, in your energy, just in yourself. And I invite you to settle in, to soften in, and enjoy while I muse on this theme of letting go. So in this part of the world, we are starting to turn into autumn. It is very clearly in the air as I stand out in the morning barefoot every morning, just to connect to the earth, the elements, to just tune into what the day is. And often, blessedly at this time of year, to catch some of the morning sunrise, some of the first rays of the day, drink it in. I'm starting to feel the freshness of the air. The grasses are damp in the mornings for longer. It's cooler underfoot. And the winds have been a bit stronger. It's been a bit damper. And yeah, there's leaves, there's nuts, there's casings all over the floor. I'm crunching over beech nuts on my bike regularly. And yeah, nature's starting to give back to the earth. So it felt right, and it's been strongly in my awareness this week to consider letting go and what that means for me at the minute. So before travel, my kind of mantra, if you can call it that, anything that's going through the mind is a mantra, and it would be on repeat. It would be, what else can I do today? What else can I squeeze in today? And I would try and squeeze in absolutely anything I could. Before I was leaving the house, I would do something up to the minute I needed to leave the house and then realise, wait, I've got to pack my bag, where's this, where's that? I'd fill every minute. And I honestly can't recall where that compulsion came from, because as a kid, I didn't feel the need to fill every minute with productivity and with doing something useful, with ticking off a to-do list. So it's clearly not something natural in me, but it came about, and that was the way that I lived for a very, very long time. And so before work, before I finished work and before I started traveling, I was very much trying to add to a list and add to a list and add to a list. And I never felt satisfied, no matter how many ticks, no matter how much I'd done, it never felt enough. And so I've come to a different state of being, a different realisation that balance is important, and it's surprising how challenging I've found it to start to embrace that and live that in my life. To start to realise that rest, that digest, that sleep is important. Although sleep's always been important to me. I love dreaming. Sleep has always been a catharsis and a gift for me. So sleep's one I would get, but before I finished work, it got to a point where I had insomnia, where I was working and sending messages late into the night and then getting up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym. So I wasn't getting enough sleep, and I was pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. So I was completely out of balance. And then I've started reading, there's a book, The Tao Te Ching by Winnie the Pooh. Can't recall the author. I'll put it in the show notes. And so it's the Tao according to Pooh. And one of the verses, one of the sections is about what's one more thing you could let go of. And it's this whole section of a master. There's the story, I'm not sure if it's in that book or another story I've heard, of a master who turns to a student and the student says, oh, I've learned this today and I've learned that today. And the master's like, oh, okay. And he starts to teach, if you like, through his actions, through his words, that actually knowledge isn't the be all and end all. And ultimately what has arisen shall cease to be. And so his invite to his student was, what's one thing you can let go of, that you could unlearn? Because if there's fullness, if the mind is full of things, if the life is full of things, if the body is full of things, your room, you can add this to anything, there's no space for anything else. If you've got a full wardrobe, you cramming and cramming and cramming, at some point that wardrobe's going to bust and give. So you've got to let go of stuff to let new stuff in or find new space for it. So for me, I've really started to come to realise that actually space is a gift. Emptiness is a gift. And travel really taught me the gift of having free time, having empty space. It started making me realise that was the time I used to daydream. That was the time I used to just walk for the pleasure of walking. That I'd go on a wander. I didn't have a set pathway. I didn't have a time that I needed to be back for. And so my first 2 weeks of New Zealand was just such grace because I could go anywhere I wanted. And so I was following what felt right, following intuition. I was often in the park in the centre because that place was like a magnet to me. Absolutely beautiful botanic gardens in the middle of Christchurch. Some trees and special spots that really stirred something in me. I could sit there very content for quite some time and just watch the poplars dancing in the wind, to watch their leaves, to see the sun gleaming through it, to hear the wind blowing through, to sit by the river, watching the birds coming and going and the waves. Water, it was never in a state of nothingness. There was always some kind of ripple. Even if it's the smallest water boatman, there was always something going on. And I found that I could be peaceful there. And that was a real revelation to me, having lived in such a busy state of being, that sitting and observing, sitting and enjoying had really fallen off the radar. As a kid, I used to play a lot, and the play had kind of all gone. And so it was in realising that when life is full, even if it's things that bring me great joy, which is wonderful, there's still a part of me that will benefit from having some space, some free time to just tune in, to potter. I love going for a potter through town, or just the charity shops. Not having a pressured time frame or anything, not a particular intent in mind, and just, in New Zealand they call them opportunity shops, just having a look and a browse. Or car boots we used to go to as kids, just for the sake of going, just for the pure pleasure of being there. Often conversations would come about because I was in no rush. I had time for people to connect, to share stories, to have a laugh, even if it was talking about the weather. It's a form of connection, and I hadn't realised how much I'd dropped that in the name of busyness, in the name of having a really diligent, strict schedule. I'd walk at pace, I'd shop at pace, my life was on speed. And so I didn't have time and space for people, for chilling, for just, for doing nothing, for being and enjoying life. And so I'm starting to reflect back now on this time in New Zealand when it was starting to come to autumn, and I'd been to a rainbow gathering, which I'll share so much more about. There was so much that happened in that month at the base of a mountain, camping out on the land with some very beautiful people indeed from across the world, and just connecting from a very heartfelt space. And after that, I went and I spent 3.5 months as an au pair with a beautiful family that I'd met there. And I realised how much, your body knows. The wisdom of the body is incredible. New Zealand helped me start to wake up to how disconnected I'd become from my body, from the seasons, from nature's rhythms and cycles. How I'd been kind of stuck in an eternal summer. We live in a society where there's this drive for exponential growth, economic productivity, whatever it happens to be. There's always an intent to grow and be better. Always this desire to be better. And that would become ingrained in me. I was always striving to improve myself in some way, shape or form. And in New Zealand, as an au pair, once the kids had gone to school and everything, when the sun was out, when it felt a little bit brighter, even sometimes when it was raining, when it was cold, I'd just feel to go out, just to be out in nature, out in the elements. And I guess that kind of helped me to start to recognise the seasons in myself as well. I didn't have as much energy. I didn't feel like doing as many things. I didn't want to go and travel further afield for days out. I was quite a home bird at that time, and that felt right. And I was like, I'm so lucky and blessed to be at a home where I can kind of hibernate over winter. So them colder months, I've got a place that I know I can be safe, I can be warm, I'm with some wonderful people. Company is such a gift. I'd not been to the doctors, but I'm aware of something called seasonal affectionate disorder. Seen it in people around me and things, and how it's been described, and I very much feel, or at the time felt, the winter, felt the low mood, could really struggle through winter, struggle to wake up. And actually, I started to realise at that point that maybe my body did want more sleep. Why is it that we have winter and longer nights and shorter days? Maybe that's nature's invite, and it's almost a bit of a... It supports us to slow down, because when there's snow on the roads and ice, you can't go as fast. You might not venture as far. And so I started to see what was going on in the world outside me as a bit of a gift and a bit of an invite and reminder of the need to rebalance, of to slow down. Being in nature was helping me to come to my own rhythm with the seasons and in myself. And so we're coming into autumn, and I'm naturally starting to think. I've felt a bit overwhelmed the last couple of weeks at various times. I've picked up a new job. I'm re-picking up some old skills, which is taking time to relearn and re-embed. And there's been a lot to navigate. It's a new schedule, it's new people, it's a new commute, it's a new routine. I also consider myself quite neurodiverse, and so that's been a lot of change and a lot of flux, and I was still trying to do everything that I was doing before I started this job. I still had an expectation of myself to carry on with a project that I've got, writing a book, editing. Right, okay, the intention is half an hour a day of this, and we can still do that. There's some qigong, the podcast, and I was still trying to do everything with a high standard and expectations of myself, and realising I really wasn't happy in that, because I felt like life was a chore. I've got lots going on in my personal life as well, and so it felt like I was at school 24/7, and there was a big toddler tantrum kicking off inside me that I was pushing down and pushing down. But I've got better at listening to that, and so this week I've had a couple of days off, and it's been a couple of days off. I've done a few things, maybe some things I didn't even need to do. And yet, I feel better in myself for it. I'm not as grumpy. I'm not as... I don't feel as tired and as... Yeah, I feel different in myself. And the stories playing through my head are different, which is a gift. And I don't feel the need for the world to be so kind to me in the way I once hoped for and often didn't get, because I'm starting to do that for myself. And it was realising in doing it for myself, the world will meet me there. And people are lovely to me. But I wasn't letting that in, I wasn't feeling that. And it's only in realising the importance of kindness for myself and letting go of that kind of slave driver, that strictness, that kind of looming authority figure in the mind that was scrutinising everything that I did and trying to military general me through the day. And to start inviting in more of this kind of motherly, gentle, if I was a child, how would my mother respond to me? And what would I need? And to realise that there's a child in me too. There's so many different parts and personalities and qualities and aspects to ourselves. We play so many roles in life. And so I'm starting to let go of some of the patterns, the habits that really don't serve me anymore. And that kind of brings me to stories as well. So I realised so many times, especially when I felt stuck, resentful, or really strong emotions, I find myself often retelling the same story over and over again to other people. And in sitting in women's circles, in reading wisdom teachings like Lao Tzu, I've started to listen to that dialogue, the inner dialogue in my mind, especially with journaling. That's been a real gift. Although I've not been engaging with it so much, I kind of sometimes go for a walk and just reflect. Have a sit down and just think, what stories are going through my head each day, and what stories am I telling other people? Am I banging the same drum over and over again? And recently I have been. I'm being compassionate with myself when I notice and realise I've done it again. But, it can take a while for old patterns to change and old habits to change. It's another chapter of my book, and my journey and my experience was really getting used to how even when habits and patterns are changing slowly and over time and with patience and with repetition and with slip-ups, because it happens, them echoes of them patterns can play out for quite some time after, and realising that's not a setback, it's not a reason to be downhearted. Maybe that's part of the process, and just accepting it's made it easier to kind of not expect myself to change overnight and be perfect in all the changes and all the letting go. So, what stories go through your head regularly? What stories do you find yourself telling to friends, family, colleagues? Are they stories that feel enriching? Are they stories you want to carry on having in your life? Or is there a new story you'd like to tell? And if there is a new story that you'd like to tell, are you willing to let go of the old to create space for that new story? And it sounds so straightforward to me at times when I'm thinking about this. Living that and putting that into practice has been a real challenge and continues to be as I learn and grow. Accepting that there might be challenges, that there might be repeats, that it might take a while, that they boomerang back round and round. I've got greater patience and compassion for that now. And I hope that long continues and it gets easier over time. Because any muscle, any skill that's practiced, that gets easier over time, right? So, letting go. As we come into winter, autumn and then winter, is there anything in you that is ready to be let go of? Is there any stories you want to let go of? Maybe it's a behaviour or a habit. For me, even when I came back from New Zealand, some of the relationships naturally fell away. I didn't actively follow up on some relationships, whether it was old work relationships or whatever. So I didn't feel overwhelmed and compelled to get in touch with everyone because life changes. And I trusted that if people were meant to stay in my life, that them connections would come back, whether I'd feel to message them, I'd bump into them, they'd message me. I really trusted in that and allowed for not picking them straight back up. And as a result, and I had also the intention to meet people of a different kind, having been to the Rainbow Gathering and met very open-hearted, very people willing to be transparent and vulnerable and authentic around each other. That was a tribe I was looking for back home, and so I started to find it, and there needed to be space for that. If I'd have kept touch with all the people that I'd been with before, and that had predominantly been through social media as well, I wouldn't have these face-to-face connections that I do now. And just thinking about this has made me realise how much my life has changed and how there's always needed to be a letting go for the new. I once heard this story about prayer and how it was explained to someone as, if you've got two clenched fists, your hands tightly gripping onto something that you're really wanting, how can that help come to you if the hands are closed? We need an open palm to receive. And that sometimes means letting go, loosening up, relaxing, not being so pent up, uptight. I've often carried tension and tightness in my body. And now I do. There's a Qigong exercise called Shake the Tree, which is literally just bouncing up on the heels. You'll find it online. I've got a podcast, a YouTube channel. I'm sure Shake the Tree will be up there somewhere in the June challenge. And that's on the Golden Light Network. And that's one that I do each day, and it's just like imagining any dead leaves, anything that I don't need, any tension or tightness in my body, just bouncing it out. And it feels like, as a baby, when you've got a baby, as any adult, the most natural thing in the world to do is to rock them and tap them. And it's like that rocking and that tapping is soothing, but maybe it's also helping, they say emotions or energy in motion, and they can get trapped in the body. And maybe that shaking and that tapping helps to just move it on through. Everything in life is vibration, whether it's a water boatman on the water, or whether it's sound, whether it's light. I think it passes through the universe. The understanding at the minute is that it's in vibration. So yeah, letting go. What a journey we've been on, a season and a cycle, and I continue to be on. So my invitation to you as we turn into the autumn is to just invite yourself to have some quiet time, maybe a journal, light a candle, and just ask yourself, what am I ready to let go of? What am I willing to let go of? What does it serve me to let go of? As we journey into the quieter months, where there's less daylight, how can I put less pressure and stress on myself, on my body? How can I soften into being, resting, slowing a bit more? How can I bring that transition into life practically? Whether it's shortening a workout slightly, taking a different pace in life. I know come winter I'll be walking instead of cycling. What practical way, even if it's just a 1-minute practice, sitting and breathing for a minute, to just remind yourself that the seasons are slowing, the leaves are going to start to shed, the wetter, darker, cooler, damper months are coming. And that's a time where seeds and nuts have been shed and they gestate in the soil. It's a time for less activity, less outer activity. The trees will start to get more and more bare. And so my invite to you is to shed a little, to lighten the load, and to journey into winter with something less. Knowing that less can actually be more, because when there's less clutter, less busyness, less occupying life, there's more space for being. There's more space for new people, new experiences to come in. New experiences, rest, restoration. So thank you for joining me today on Musings of a Modern Day Mystic with me, Amy Yasmin, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for sharing this with anyone you think might resonate with it, commenting, growing the conversation, the community, sharing your stories and experiences. Everyone's got a fresh perspective, and I've learned so much through sharing stories and experiences in women's circles and online. So feel free to share your stories of letting go and what that means for you. And let's grow and share as a community things that inspire us, support us, and that we've grown and lived through. Take good care, everyone. Until next time. Namaste.